Dynamic Hour with Dr. Mike Kaufman, PhD. And, of course, Dr. Mike, your website is?
AmericaPlundered.com. You caught me off guard.
AmericaPlundered.com. And you have a book coming out in 2 or 3 months. You have a further expose on Islam. I spoke yesterday, and again, people may say, you're anti-Semitic, Dr. Deagle. You can't say that to me. I'm Semitic, okay? I'm Lebanese, part Lebanese. My mother's side were direct blood descendants of Moses. So forget that, flush that, stamp that. What we do is we're against Satanism. I'm not a racist. I am not a racist. I have pretty well every race you can imagine. I mean, probably I even have a Mongolian patch on my back, so I probably have some Asian. The only thing I'm pretty sure I don't have is I don't have black. But I'm not racist. But what I am is I'm against Satanism. And what happened is I believe in the coat of many colors of Joseph. It really referred to the blessing that God gave to the outer court, which was exampled in the Old Testament version of the temple, which is for all peoples of earth, to bless them with the peoples of Israel, not to curse them as the current state of Israel, which is I call Israel, because it's being led by ultra-Orthodox Talmudic Jews who are not, as Jesus would say, of the synagogue of Satan, and globalists that are basically completely satanic, like Mr. Netanyahu, who's a member of the CFR. Our State Department, we had this recently mentioned by a Jew, Barry Chamish, who's a friend of mine for years, gave $300 million to Hamas, which, by the way, was funded by Shin Bet and Israel to create consternation and destruction, so Israel would justify further destruction and putting their own people in danger. And right now they're in a panic because Syria lobbed 5 missiles and injured a lot of people in Israel. Israel can't withstand 200,000 rockets coming at it. And the nuclear option is not an option, because Israel will be nuked flat in a pancake by Russia and Iran within a matter of minutes, not hours, if they start a big conflict. So this whole philosophy, including Americans' foreign policy against Russia and Islam, is going to get every single city and every American dead. And the fact that we are exposing this, it's really simple. The solutions are simple. When we have evil people like Hillary Clinton who want a brigade of private army around her, but want to disarm Americans and arm Syrian, quote, rebels, which aren't even Syrian, they're from Qatar and elsewhere in the Middle East, trying to create destruction. And in the latest report I got this morning, because I get my news reports, 215 Syrian soldiers executed by ISIS, the Israeli state, they call it the Islamic State, IS, it's called, is. It used to be called ISIS, and it got changed quickly, because it's constantly evolving. Our government is so freaking evil, and that's the nicest words I can say about it, so twisted, they can't even keep their lives straight. And to kind of sort this out, to tell you that the solutions to problems, whether it's life extension, a detoxed world, energy policies, space exploration, protection against near space objects, coronal mass ejections, all these environmental issues which the government is completely ignoring, like the intertidal region in British Columbia being destroyed by Fukushima, all of it's happening by design. This is not an accident. Everything, including destruction of our economic system. We're already the number one oil producer on the planet. We're not number 2 or 3 or 5. We're number one. This is ridiculous that we don't have a booming, exploding economy. It's ridiculous that we allow trade with countries like China and Indonesia that blow smokestack pollution to us, or treat their own workers like human garbage and robots. Treat them so lowly, in fact, that they commit suicide in the Foxconn facility in China. I think it's disgusting the way we call them most favored nation status when they literally force abort women in China. And when we deal with Muslim countries where they treat women like garbage, why do we deal with this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Because our leaders are not Americans. They are globalists. We don't even have a president. What we have is a proxy globalist satanic leader, 32nd degree Mason, who's a DID or dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality, narcissistic, subnormal intelligence, maniac called Barack Obama, and that's only one of his names, because as we should say, when he announces on the teleprompter, he should say, I'm Barack Obama, one of many. The man is avatared by demonic evil global Satanism, period. And if people say they want to dispute that, I'm sorry. If you don't look into the spiritual realm of this, you will never, ever discern the geopolitical stupidity and horror, because it's far descends stupidity. This is evil in its most vile, what I call the event horizon of destruction. Vile form. There's no need for it. We can, with the power of our intellect and the God-given gifts that our Creator God gave us, make a non-polluted world, a world safe for people to live in, where every nation, every color, every people on earth can start to know the Most High God in a proper way that does not cause religious wars, does not cause economic destruction, doesn't destroy the ozone layer, trying to create a space weapon protection. But, Dr. Mike, right now, our machinations of our government and NATO, trying to start war in Ukraine, trying to start war in the Middle East, they're desperate to get World War III going, aren't they?
Yes, they are, and that's the thing that disturbs me the most. As you said, most of what we see going on right now is probably deliberate. And it's the Soloninsky approach to tearing everything down to the basic foundation of life and then rebuilding it in their image. Except the problem is it has already been done a couple times in Russia and China, or the Soviet Union, I should say, in China, and it's found it cannot work the way they think it's going to work.
Right.
That's the problem with the progressive ideology, is that they think they're always right, and that all they need to do is more time, more money, make the project bigger, and it's certainly going to work because they thought of it, they dreamed it up. It's their idea. Therefore, it's going to work because it's their idea. They have no connection to reality whatsoever, and in the process, they're doing a good job tearing everything down. They can do that very, very well, and they are doing it.
Well, it's the ancient ceremony, the ceremony of the high priests of ancient Atlantis and Mu, called a ceremony that was reinstated in Sumer, called the ceremony of Pahanuk, the ceremony of the phoenix that was reproduced in ancient Egypt, where they bring about organized and controlled and directed destruction, and then they have their model of what they want to rise out of the ashes, which is what they want. They want and I'll give you the short list. They want to have life extension for their population and cybernetic fusion. They want to have a vastly reduced world population to 200 to 500 million. They want to have domed cities where people basically outside die because they don't have enough oxygen. They want to have the Seedvault and Svalbard islands up in Norway, 700 miles from the North Pole, so they can pollute the genetic seed populations of the earth through Monsanto, I call them Mount Satan, at the same time killing off the human population by making genetically modified people and destroying our health so that we don't get life extension. We don't get what we call zero senescence, which is no more than 5 to 15 years away. Literally, people around right now, there are people around right now that will literally not get older. And the only way they'll die is from wars, stupid accidents, which I call on purposes where people should know better, or something galactic like a coronal mass ejection or a gamma burst from a local supernova going off. I mean, honestly, human beings can live thousands of years theoretically because the same genetics are present in you at the moment of death as when you're born. But they don't want zero-point energy or nuclear fusion from stardust where helium-3 is made in the heliosphere of the sun. They don't want trees living like the great trees of the west coast of the United States and Canada, the great Douglas fir and redwood. They don't want people living in peace with other animals like the great whales of the oceans, where we even have our ships crowd across their migratory patterns so they smack into them and kill them, just with our great container ships. We don't respect the world. And our God says we're supposed to be stewards of the planet, but we aren't. What we are is we are a horror. And we're led by fools, and the reason why it happens, and Einstein made it very clear, the destruction happens not because evil is destroying the world, but because good people, supposedly good people, are doing nothing. But there's no one good that has a mouth that's shut. You think you're good and you don't speak out or oppose evil, you yourself are part of the problem.
I would agree with that, and that's one of the problems that we're facing right now, is that most people, the vast majority of people, probably would agree with this if they knew all the facts. Now, a lot of them don't because they don't know the facts.
Well, it's not a matter of the facts. Intellect has nothing to do with it. These people are quivering cowards. They are willingly ignorant in the face of facts that even a moron would understand is true. But they want to do ad hominem attacks. They want to pretend it's not going on like little children, like Hansel and Gretel collecting crumbs to get back to Grandma's house. And they're fools, and they want everybody else to try to get ignorant or political correct or otherwise to try to crucify those who want to tell the truth. Well, let's go through the analysis, Dr. Mike, after my little rant. As we said on the break, what we do in this program is very different from any show on this network or any other show on television or radio. We challenge you intellectually, spiritually, geopolitically to seek the truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. If you do not seek truth, you're always powerless, and you will be a victim. I treat people with infinite kindness. And Jesus said, you treat them as yourself. In other words, the golden rule is, care for your brothers and sisters if they're you. But don't treat their stupidity and their arrogance and ignorance with anything less than violence. Stupidity and cognitive dissonance and a lack of intellectual rigor to deal with the truth, and we speak against lies and destruction and evil, that is the basis of why evil abounds. It doesn't abound because evil is just so powerful. It abounds because so-called good people do nothing.
Yes.
And that includes identifying even inside Islam. If there were good Muslims, why aren't they speaking out against the extreme elements within Islam that are so horrifying against women, against other populations that are non-Muslim? In the same way with Sabbatean Satanism. We have good people like Barry Chamish, who's a Reformed Jew, who speaks against the Islam, what I call the satanic state of Israel and its destruction. We're going right back from the labor Zionists, communists, Satanists, that actually caused the destructions of millions of Jews because they wouldn't let them migrate even to the Middle East. People need to start telling the truth. And that's what Jesus said. I'm going to bring peace to earth when I bring the sword of truth to this situation. Whether it's a medical situation, a geopolitical situation, a spiritual situation, we need to bring the sword of truth to all of these and cut out the garbage.
I agree. And one of the things that I bring out in my book, Radical Islam in the House, in the House, is the fact that if you look at the Quran, it has 99 beautiful verses on Allah. And 6 of those basically says that Allah is the greatest deceiver of all time. Well, who in the Bible is the greatest deceiver? It is Satan. Right. And everything else that Allah or the Quran holds dear, the Bible condemns as satanic or of evil. And so what you're seeing here basically is the face of raw evil driven by satanic, I can only say deception, because I don't see how people can do what they're doing right now and really live with themselves at night if they weren't in the state of utter deception or delusion.
Well, this is why in Judaism, Jesus would say of the modern Jews, they're descendants of the Pharisees.
Yes.
They are the synagogue of Satan because they revere the commentaries of rabbis on the Talmud of Babylon, 1600 years in apostate Babylon, over the prophets and over the words of Moses in the Torah. So the Reformed Jews basically said, we're not going to listen to the Talmudic garbage and these rabbi rantings. We're going to listen to what the Torah says and celebrate the feast days because they're sick and tired of it. Or a lot of Jews have just become secular agnostics. That's the reason why a lot of them are that way. And, of course, persecution comes on all Jews because Satan wants to stop both the people of the book. If you wanted to call the title of all the descendants of Jews, which are the half-tribe of Benjamin and Judah, they're not Israel, it would be because they, even if they didn't understand it, they kept the book. Through all these ages, they kept the book, even if they didn't understand it fully. Didn't even understand, or they were told not to by the rabbis, not to understand the coming of Yeshua, who are real Jews, like my ancestors, real Hebrews, like the descendants of Moses, became immediately the followers of Yeshua because they knew he was the Father in the flesh. But God also said, when I return, you shall be as I am. And in other words, what he's saying is, you're not qualitatively different than me. You're my children. You're my descendants. You're my blood spiritual descendants when you follow and become like me. You seek light, you seek truth, you take action, and you're brave because you're not afraid of death. That's what brings, peace on earth. Peace isn't going to come because you elect somebody like Obama or Rand Paul or some visionary leader that's going to tell you that the Pope is right, that he's going to bring all the Abrahamic religions together, which is a pile of Jesuit satanic garbage. This man is evil.
Yes, he is. And that gets you into the progressive sides, too, the progressive side. And if you look at what Solinsky wrote and what others have written in that particular arena, this isn't a huge percentage of our population, but they have tremendous control over our various institutions of like government, and so forth. And what they basically believe is that you can say anything you want to do. This is true with Islam, too. You can lie, you can cheat, you can do anything as long as it advances what they perceive their agenda is. If it's Islam, it's Islam. If it's progressivism, it's progressivism. And as a consequence, what you're seeing here is lying and cheating and all the rest on both sides, which comes right out of the pit of hell, and it is very satanic in its origin. And what we're faced with right now, if you have ever really done a study on what Obama has said, about 99% of what he says is a lie. Nothing but a lie. Deliberate lies. When it isn't even necessary, it's a lie. And as a consequence, what we're dealing with is raw deception, and unfortunately, at least 50% of our American population is so dumbed down and so involved in watching football or just having a good time or whatever. Some of them is because they're having to work 15 to 16 hours a day, but most of the people who are supporting Obama don't have a clue as to what the truth is because they never look for it.
Well, they've trained to be victims, and I'm going to deal with a thing I call generational curses. Generational curses occur on 3 levels. The first level is, for example, with blacks, is they've been conditioned that they can become slaves. And it turned out some black tribes would literally invade and take over other black tribes, sell them to primarily Jewish slave traders that would come from Europe. And those Jewish slave traders would make sure they were sent to South America for the mines, to America for the plantations, etc. But it was other black tribes that actually captured them. People don't know that. What they have to understand is this is ingrained into their culture that they can become victims. Now, you don't see that in Europe, because in Europe, many of the people there are descendants from the northern tribes of Israel, and they became, if you want to call it, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vikings, etc. These are people you do not cross. You cross Europeans, you end up with death and destruction. And that includes, by the way, the Russians. The Russians are completely Vikings, and they're mixed with the Mongols or another people who are never crushed. So what happens is, you've got these people that genetically and historically and transgenerationally have never been dominated or destroyed completely. Even when the Medo-Persian Empire cast off these tribes, they tried to separate them from the land and send them to Europe. They never really conquered them. You don't see evidence that the Medo-Persians still held control of the European northern tribes. They didn't. Because these tribes, when they eventually came into Rome, they just took over Rome. So the fact is, that's part of it. Now, on a spiritual level, what's happened is, and I believe this is demonic, and it goes back to these crazy interpretations that are in the interpretations by rabbis of the book of Genesis that says the people that the son of Ham, Canaan, saw Noah's nakedness and they cursed him with slavery, which is another lie. And that was held into the Mormons even into the mid-1970s when they supposedly made an update by one of their Mormon prophets. The fact is, we need to throw this off with the truth and tell people they're all God's children, no matter what their skin color. And they need to be independent and powerful.
Global warming.
Welcome back. And so, Dr. Mike, let's go through the analysis of this. As I say, it's like a Walmart with different labeled products, but they're all Walmart products. They're all Satanism, let's call it. We'll call it Satan's Walmart. And the public, basically, I like to dissect the words. They're not really, I call ignorant in the sense that they don't have the capacity to know this, like someone who's mentally impaired. They have the capacity. They can even see the facts. A lot of them are slapping right in the face. But they've been trained to pretend that they are ignorant, to feign ignorance, so that they can use in their feigned ignorance a way of attacking the messenger, of maintaining themselves as a victim of the overlords, which the overlords want to propose, because literally the overlords know that if they can get the people to believe what future or what present timeline they have, they can change the future. Which is why the overlords of the high priests or our culture, which are now the secret agencies, for example, one of the quotes that I've heard from repeatedly, we've talked about this recently, is the Jesuits' intelligence agency is more powerful than the CIA. And that's by people high inside the CIA and the NSA agencies that I've heard this statement before. So we have to understand what's really going on here is Satanism in all its ugly forms, and the full flower of that publicly is Islam, which is why the ultimate marriage of Islam and the New World Order and the globalists is perfect. That's why ISIS is trained by us in a town in Jordan, and now we're bombing them. It's perfect. They're the perfect boogeyman, the perfect victim, the perfect horror, saying they're now going to blow up Chicago. Did you hear the latest statement that ISIS is saying they're going to blow up Chicago?
Good luck.
Good luck. I mean, I can tell you right now, it's like Napolitano said, our former security officer that left the gate wide open to let this disaster happen coming from Mexico and Central and South America. This is all happening by design.
Yes, it is.
All by design. There's no need to have illegals in this country. We could have a real solid border. We can have a rapid and efficient immigration system that would make sure people are trained to be Americans, are not criminals getting in here, including those that get in who have served one or two services coming from some of these South American countries. You know,
Australia had the same immigration or illegal problem that we had coming in from the islands and so forth. And when Abbott was elected prime minister 2 years ago, he said, all right, you have 90 days, and then you're going to be sent back no matter what. You're never going to get Australian citizenship, period. And guess what? They have zero immigration problems now. It's a very simple problem to handle. All they need to do is to have control over the border, as well as a policy that does not allow anyone that's illegal to ever gain citizenship. And there will be no desire for these people to come north. And until we do that, we're going to continue to have this splitting, this raging problem that we have.
That's why people like Rand Paul would solve it. Now, the only thing I don't dislike about Rand Paul, he's too obedient to what I call the Satanistic Jews that run the state of Israel. Mm-hmm. The fact is, Israel is the tail wagging the dog of America. And the best thing America could do is be to literally annex the state of Israel, to defang not only Israel, but all the Muslim nations around it that have all these advanced weapons. And that could be very easily done. And we could just send our Delta and Special Forces, space-based weapons, clean them right out. Robotic drones, just move in, bam, bam, bam. In a couple of weeks, it's gone. You don't need to worry about policing it forever. You just continually go back in and just rescan the place and just clean it out. Just like cleaning your house every 2 weeks. You clean out the garbage. You make certain that no one gets into the country that can do any kind of terrorism. Now these idiots in Israel are going to have wide open borders with Palestinians and Hamas, and they don't think they're going to have terrorism killing Israelis.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, and then on the Israeli side, how stupid is it? They allow the Palestinians and the Gazans to actually have. I was there in '99. They had a trailer where they had a mock-up of a cafe in Tel Aviv where they blew up Israeli citizens and tourists, and they had paper mache and plastic body parts stuck to the walls, and how wonderful it was for Palestinians and young men who were now members of the jihadists, the Salafi jihadists, walking through these trailers saying how wonderful they died for Allah and got their 72 virgins by killing these damn Jews. And I'm thinking, I'm so sick of us being manipulated on both sides by Satanism. I'm just sick of it. And what we're doing really, we're operating in the office of true apostolic and prophetic leaders when we actually tell the truth with the plain facts right in front of us.
Yeah, and that's very true, and that's one of the reasons I think the final hope in this country is not through education, although that we got to keep that up. It's the fact that we need to be able to start a new revival, one which is just will sweep this country, because the only way you can get these nutcases, and I say nutcases, these are good, decent Americans. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is because they have deliberately avoided the truth, and because the truth has not been taught to them in school.
They haven't been challenged. I mean, I read an article that was sent to me, an email yesterday, about how many pastors in the churches know that all these issues are going on. 90% is the number. And how many would say raise it even some of the issues in church, and 10%. Most of them said, well, what kind of action do we take? And the number was 0. Yeah. So what's happened is we have basically silent pastors who, to me, are gutless jellyfish that are causing troubles by literally letting their own church members march into the jaws of a new world order that's eventually going to take away their equity in their home, their health, their property, and eventually force them to take a chip or a biometric system for money, where if they disagree with the state or the super state, the world state, they will literally be alt-deleted out of existence. And people say, oh, that can't happen. I say, of course it's going to happen. What do you think this is? This is like seeing gas gangrene. You can take off a toe, or you can wait till you take off the leg or the person is dead. You know, do you want to take the toe off today, or do you want to take off the leg next week?
That's the choice. That is the choice.
Right.
And until we begin to realize it, and I think one of the first things that we can do as Americans, especially Christian Americans, is not fall for this politically correct garbage that they keep throwing at us.
I get a kick out of these terms. They have all these terms, you know, like quantitative easing.
Yeah,
what kind of a term is this? Political correctness. Like as if they have high moral ground immediately by basically taking no stand whatsoever for good against evil.
Yep. Well, and as far as I can see, and I've studied this pretty extensively, most of what we're getting accused of in the political correctness realm is projection on the part of these progressives. They themselves are the bigots. They themselves are the racists. They themselves are the ones
like
who are creating the divisions and so forth, and yet they project it onto the rest of the population. It's all our fault, not their fault. It's all our fault. And we've got to stop just accepting that and just saying, I'm sorry, if you're going to be talking about racism, you're the racist by even bringing up the subject. You don't even have to be nasty about it. All you have to do is to shut them down, because they have nothing to stand on. They have no facts whatsoever. All they have is accusations and ad hominem attacks and all the rest on you and I. And once they begin to be exposed for who they are, they're going to scurry for underneath the rocks as fast as they can.
It's like somebody who's a control freak accusing everybody else who won't come under control to being control freaks because they're not going to be compliant.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's like the Republicans being the obstructionists when they don't accept what Obama and the Senate wants. Then they're obstructionists, as if what Obama wants and what the Senate wants and the progressive Democrats want is the absolute truth of the universe, and it's the Republicans that are stopping it. Now, I'm not really in favor of Republicans, don't get me wrong.
No, in fact, I think we need a clean house.
The mentality that they have is that they will project onto the opposite party, whoever there's opposing them, what they themselves are doing.
Well, what they do is I call it the movement of the snake. There's two compartments of the snake party that runs our government. And there's a Republican side of the snake, which pushes against the Democratic side. And as they push against each other, which allows them to move along the floor of the geopolitical landscape, they're able to pretend, for example, with Mr. Boehner in there, he constantly blocks the idea that they're going to actually even start the idea of impeaching Obama. We need to fire Boehner, and we need to impeach Obama. And even the process, even if we haven't gotten taken over the Senate, it will paralyze the maniac so we can't do more crap before he declares martial law. One of his latest executive orders is he doesn't need any reason to declare martial law.
No, he
just
doesn't.
Needs to get out of the wrong side of the bed, fall out, bang his head, and say, I'm telling you, I had it. It's martial law today. Bang my head, man. It's over. He doesn't need to have any reason. He can have diarrhea, he can have constipation, he can have gastric reflux, he can just have a tummy pain. He can start it. Well, welcome back, and Dr. Mike, let's talk about global warming. This is an example of insanity. And I hear some of the latest comments by the IMF. Like, what the hell right does the IMF and the chairman say we need to depopulate the Imperial Valley of California because of climate change? What does she have to open her damn jap and make statements about something where she's overseeing the financial world of the international MFer group, I would call them, almost like a curse word, but these are bad bastards. When they come and rape and pillage a country, there's nothing left, just like Argentina. And then, of course, our so-called courts try to uphold things which has no jurisdiction in these countries.
Right.
So we have idiots like the last Prime Minister of Australia, who, thank God, is gone, that crazy witch, Julia Gillard, and now, of course, I get updates every week from Margaret, who's an emergency room nurse in Australia, and she tells me all the horrible things that they've been doing under Julia Gillard. They have these school programs and trying to frighten people in the news, and they're trying to do what we call these mini house programs where you get apartments that are the size of a sarcophagus. It's ridiculous. It's so obscene and so inhuman. And yet idiots think that somehow they're going to save the planet when Mount Erebus in Antarctica puts out 10,000 times more carbon dioxide than the largest coal-fired generators without even scrubbers on the planet. And yet these morons, they want to take the best coal in Australia, which is what we call anthracite coal, that makes coking coal for making steel and real production,
right,
which we sell to China and other countries, and they're shutting them all down.
Yeah.
Rather than having scrubbers to take out the sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide.
I believe that the whole point of the whole global warming issue, because it is a total and absolute fraud, right from the beginning. I'm a climate scientist. I have a PhD in this particular area.
Right.
And excuse me. And the absurdity of man overcoming what is naturally put out by the earth, it's something like 2,000 or 3,000 times more than man will ever dream of putting out. And there is no evidence whatsoever, zero evidence that man is causing any, well, I'm not going to say any. I mean, there's always a probability that can be a couple %, but there's really no indication that man is causing any significant amount of global warming whatsoever. And, of course, we've had 18 years now with no warming whatsoever. And the idea, the very idea, in fact, we're going in, I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but since the first of the year, there has been 3 times as many cold records being set in this nation as there are hot weather or hot temperature records.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's happening is we're heading toward a Maunder-type ice age.
Yes.
Now, we're having a destruction of the ozone layer, and there's 3 reasons for it. The first is we're not stopping Fukushima, and that, in the last 3.5 years, has destroyed a lot of the ozone layer. We've been geoengineering the upper atmosphere because America wants the U.S. space shield to not be theater air defense alone, which is missile to hit a missile. They put a nanoparticle, paramagnetic that we call nanoparticle array up at 73 to 80,000 feet, which spreads out over 2.5 to 4 years before it falls to ground and then destroys the intermycorrhizal lichens that allow trees to live and get nutrients, so the forests are dying. And it's destroying the ozone layer, especially combined with radionuclides. And now we're wondering why the benthic layer of the oceans is dying and trees are dying and the world concentration of oxygen is going to drop. Now that the Pacific Ocean is in the process of dying, we're going to see the people what I call frontal lobectomy behavior. Basically, the big cities like Sao Paulo, Brazil, you'll see oxygen levels drop to 10 or 11%. And then you're going to see what we call real, no executive function, out of control human beings that will be acting like zombies. That's what I'm seeing happening. And so, you're
saying that it hasn't happened yet?
It's happening.
I see zombies everywhere.
It's happening now, and because you have the zombieized, mineral deficient, toxic food, aspartame splenda, bad education, all of the things, the abuse of the so-called both regular medical drugs, which are toxic as hell, and then the toxic and laced often illegal drugs, and human beings don't have half a chance. They have diseducation rather than real education, which is didactic and confrontational to teach them to have an intellect. And instead, what they're being taught is just absorb and regurgitate like a large maggot. I call it maggot education. Absorb, regurgitate. If you regurgitate anything other than what you absorb from the teachers, you're anathema.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And what I see happening in our culture dealing with the environment is pure foolishness. We need to stop killing the oceans. We need to stop geoengineering the upper climate of the atmosphere to quote, act as an interferometry field against incoming nuclear missiles. Why don't we just make nuclear missiles and warfare obsolete? But instead, the globalists are proliferating nuclear weapons and other weapon systems, and they wonder why we're marching at an enormous pace toward World War III, which will wipe off life on this planet. That's where we're headed. And there's no need for it.
It's becoming almost inevitable now. I'm really concerned about what's going on geopolitically in that sense. But get back to global warming. One of the things that I want to reassure the listeners is, if you don't know it already, the National Climate Assessment just came out last spring, and
right.
It is, as a climate scientist, it's the most horrifying document I have ever read. Even the IPCC fifth assessment that they put out last year is better than the National Climate Assessment that Obama put out. I don't think there's any truth in it whatsoever. It is nothing but a pack of lies. And you know why? It's just because the environmental community wrote it. It was the environmentalists that wrote it for the government.
Yeah, but the environmentalists are not regular environmentalists.
It's a pile of propaganda.
Listen, I was one of the founding members of Greenpeace over 40 years ago.
Yes.
As an oceanographer before I went into medicine. And I can tell you they were taken over by the globalist bankers.
Yes.
Because they wanted a globalist platform on which to have high moral ground to control the world economy. Because the world economy is not the American dollar or the British pound sterling or the euro. It's energy. And when you have energy from the vacuum and helium-3, which is basically made by the heliosphere of the sun, it literally comes off the solar wind, and it lands and crystallizes on the moon, which is 500,000 to 10 million times higher concentration, which mining on the moon, even the Chinese now are coming out and saying it. They've got 3,500 scientists dedicated to helium-3 fusion. We've had it for over 50 years. They want to say they're going to invent something we already have, because these are solutions to problems, which mean you no longer are consuming oxygen, which is bad.
Right.
Yeah. Number two, you're no longer destroying the Earth by using nuclear technology that can go bad, like Fukushima, that can destroy the ozone layer and kill the carbon-oxygen cycle. We need to start understanding how our system and our world is a living thing, and we're killing it. And it's not that we have peak energy or that there's so-called fossil fuels. That's another stupid idiot idea. The fuels are made by a nuclear reaction, because the Earth is a nuclear reactor. Otherwise, 1.5 billion years after the inception of planet Earth, it would have already hardened, and we would not have a molten core, because it would not be a nuclear reactor. The reason why we have a magnetosphere is because our nuclear reactor, planet Earth, generates a magnetosphere because it has this plasma field inside the core that's actually creating it. We live on a nuclear reactor called Earth. That's what it is.
Yep, it is. That's right. But I do want to assure, before we have to leave, and time is running out, there has been no increase in extreme weather. Zero. In fact, it's probably less now than it has been in 100 years. We are going through a very severe drought of tornadoes, of hurricanes, and all the extreme weather things that they come out every day and say it's getting worse. It's not. It's actually better than it's been in 100 years.
Wow.
I mean, it's just nothing but a series of bald-faced lies coming out of our government. I cannot believe the amount of lying our government is doing to us. I guess I should after all these years, but it's just, it used to be that they always had some sort of link back to the truth somewhere. That's not even true anymore. They don't even show
the respect to lie nicely, so you could somewhat believe it if you had two clues to rub together.
Yes,
they don't even show the respect to lie with some form of decency. That's how little respect they have for the average population. And when I have people that want to argue with me, which, by the way, becomes very ugly, because whether I'm calling people back and they try to act like smart alecks with me, I stomp on them hard. Because my attitude is, I love people, I will do anything for people, I'll die for them. But I treat their ignorance and their vile stupidity, which is, by the way, on purpose, because most of them have enough brains to know otherwise, with violence. And people say, my wife even says, don't say that, Bill. I said, I have a personality disorder, which is to seek, as Jesus said, the truth no matter what.
Yeah.
If you seek the truth, you have power. If you have power, you're automatically a leader. If you're a leader, it means you have responsibility under the Most High God to preserve not only our planet, but the people of this planet and our nation. And everyone in this nation is a sovereign. We are not cattle to be herded by Obama and the progressive maniacs and the Muslims who behead us or fillet their women alive because they've violated this or that. I mean, just let's face it, evil abounds because good men do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they ignore it. Again, your website, Dr. Mike, is?
AmericaPlunder.com. All this information is on it. Look at the op-eds and so forth, and you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and we'll have you back on soon, Dr. Mike, and I guess the next 2 or 3 months you'll have your book out. Islam, I believe Muslims should never be allowed to become Americans. Period.
Yep.
And then we have Satanists, we wrote them out of all our banks, whether they're Jewish Sabbateans or Talmudics. We should remove all Satanists.
If you're searching for a powerful detox that's gentle enough to use every day, use Pro EM1 from Terraganics. Pro EM1 is a powerful liquid probiotic that uses good bacteria to suppress pathogens and gently eliminate toxins from your body. A healthy digestive system will cleanse and remove toxins, support weight loss, improve absorption of food nutrients, and aid in controlling yeast and other infections. Pro EM1 is made with only non-GMO and certified organic ingredients, has no preservatives, and is dairy, soy, wheat, and gluten-free. Pro EM1 is the key to your digestive health. Order Pro EM1 Daily Probiotic Cleanse at Terraganix.com, spelled Terraganix.com, or call toll-free 866-369-3678. That's 866-369-3678. Also available through Amazon Prime. Pro EM1 from Terraganix. Life's getting better.